Tonight, a university student heads home after a long day, but trouble is loitering behind her, and there's no help in sight. It's going to be a one-woman show of sheer determination and mind over fear. Auckland Park in Johannesburg is student central, a stone's throw away from some of Joburg's prestigious institutions as well as nightlife. It's busy and buzzing. This is where Noxolo lived at the time of her attack.
My name is Noxolo. I am a medical scientist. Medical scientists track all diseases such as TB, influenza, and all other diseases you can think of. I did my undergrad at the University of KwaZulu-Natal in biological sciences and honors. So I found my niche around honors. And then I moved to Johannesburg to do my master's.
I'm Michelle. I live here in Auckland Park. I met Nox when I saw an ad on Facebook. It was a professor from UJ saying he was looking for accommodation for his PhD students, and Nox found it to her satisfaction. Nox and I had a special connection right from the start.
I think I'm very timid looking. I don't give off that fighting energy.
Noxolo is reserved and confident. She's super smart. She's not a party animal. She's a serious somebody who's determined to get somewhere in life.
In my family, academics are important. My mom has 2 degrees, and my brother studied also up to honors, so it's sort of the rite of passage. When you're doing your master's, you are expected to be fully independent. You just have to sort of organize your own progress meetings, be proactive, basically. But if you're not, it can take you even up to 5 years. Pushing yourself can be a bit challenging.
Being a freelance graphic designer myself, I spent many hours late at night sitting at my desk, and Nox would join me, and the two of us would sit working until all hours of the morning. She worked jolly hard.
Being a Black woman, you also go through challenges like having to walk to campus, for example, because you don't necessarily have a car like your other counterparts.
And this was a route Noxolo walked almost every day as a student and employee.
Auckland Park and Melville is well known for its snatch and grab. People at the back were held up at gunpoint. The first few days, I think I dropped Nox at varsity until she got the sense of how to walk and where to go.
Walking in Auckland Park as a student, people would alert you, like a student got mugged here 2 days ago.
But this time, things would be different.
I think it was the 4th of September, I had gotten a job like a few months before. I had taken my hard drive to work to continue working on my thesis, and as usual, I took it back home with me that day. I think it had been a good day. We were a bit excited about spring. So I was trying out public transport, so I had gotten off at a taxi and then just walked roughly 500 meters to my house. While I was walking from the main road, I was always alert. I could see cars that were coming. For example, that car was coming from Campus Square. The drive was very slow, so I thought, okay, that's a bit odd. But as soon as I turned into my street, I was like, okay, I'm nearly home.
But Noxolo wasn't alone in this quiet street.
Then I saw their car slowing down. So while I was looking at that, the 2 men came out of the car. the first thing you think of is running, which I did, but they cornered me into a bed of flowers.
And you can see when she kind of sits in the bushes, she just knew something was about to go down.
Next, Noxolo faces 3 men who threaten to shoot her, but the woman with determination stands her ground. It's a spring afternoon in Auckland Park. A hard-working woman is heading home after a long day. Normal, right? Unfortunately, in South Africa, this is a normal setting for a violent crime against a woman. Thembelihle Madi is a community mobilizer at Sonke Gender Justice. Their organization knows more than most how women in South Africa are under siege.
Amalam Thembelihle Madi, ngisebenza Sonke Gender Justice. So, to educate the community on gender-based violence. We want to see a South Africa or even an Africa where patriarchy is dismantled. We find that women are the biggest survivors of domestic violence and femicide in the country. So for us to constitute a crime as gender-based violence, it has to be motivated by a sexist view or a discrimination against women. The view that women are inferior to men. What happened to Noxolo would happen to any woman and nobody would even say anything about it. It's because, well, it's the norm. Gender-based violence has been normalized, even in public.
And an easy victim is what these 3 men attacking a sole woman saw.
When they cornered me, I was definitely scared because I couldn't run anywhere. I think they pushed me just to gain more power, because I think if you push anyone down, they would just surrender and just give up. At the back of my mind, I was hoping that someone inside that house could hear me. And one of them actually just spoke to me and just said, just give us your bag. Immediately, I panicked because I was thinking about my work, the work that I had put in throughout the day.
The bag that Nox was holding had her hard drive in it.
I had done too much that day, so I dropped my lunch bag. They collected it and threw it in the car and came back to try and take my handbag from me.
And this was the moment when the victim turned into a hero.
Something in me just said, no, nah, not today. But it was that fight or flight mode, and I definitely fought.
You know how adrenaline works. The fear went out the window and she just fought.
Pelma Shabane is a counselor who has experience in dealing with survivors of traumatic incidents like Noxolo's.
I think she was scared. I think she was anxious, confusion. I think that's one of the things that made her run. But then when it comes to the fight or flight scenario, when you're caught in a stressful situation, it's a matter of it's individualistic. Being caught in a stressful situation, one only performs how they think they would be able to deal with that situation.
The 2 were saying, I'll shoot you. I think they were also just trying to scare me. I did think that they might shoot me, but I was looking at how easily he was flicking that gun. It just looked too light.
The adverse consequences of Noxolo fighting in that situation could have been many, right? So 1, she could have been put in the car. 2, she could have, been stabbed. She could have been, raped.
I don't know where I got the strength or why I held on, because even my family were asking why I did that. It could have ended badly for me, but I was just determined to save my work. But when the car was being driven closer to me, I started panicking more because I thought they were gonna just push me into the car and drive off.
If she'd been taken in the car, what would have happened then?
We're not saying that women, shouldn't fight. But we need to understand that sometimes we do need to kind of pick our battles. And it's very unfortunate that as women, we even have to think about things like that. When do I fight and when do I not? But in that situation, it could have gone much, much worse. The worst case scenario, femicide.
I could tell that the driver was also getting quite annoyed because he also started screaming, "Just give us the bag."
But Noxolo held onto her bag for dear life.
I just focused on what I was doing at that moment. I think they were also getting tired of this tug and war that we were in. So I had worked on that thesis for that whole year. I did have other copies in my computer at home. The work I had done that day was only on the hard drive that I had with me.
So Nox's master's was very important to her. She spent all her waking hours on that master's.
I was continuously screaming throughout the whole ordeal. So I think that attracted some attention from people that were passing by.
I did feel really shocked to realize that she was really isolated in that incident, and seeing that really made me realize that when something like that happens, you're on your own.
Bystanders normally don't do anything about, when they are witnessing a crime, not only because of fearing for themselves, but also of socialization. I mean, elokishini, we say, "Hi, right? Zosala nawe." A man, in some people, umuntu ongakushayi akakuthandi. So mebabona omunye umuntu ashaywa, kusho ukuthi uyathandwa. For some people, they don't understand the depth of the violation that women go through, and in what parts of a woman does it really affect.
But the lady that drove past me did not stop. She later reached out. She had said that she had kids in the car, so she was too scared to also stop the car.
It's just a terrible state in our country that we actually don't think that we can intervene, because then we will be at risk.
But the people started gathering at the bottom of the street, and I think that also put pressure on these guys. And then they just got into the car and drove off. So I think people gathering at the end put pressure on them to sort of let go. I actually came back to reality immediately. So I started running towards the crowd. As soon as I reached the other people, they just reassured me that I'm okay.
Settling down at my computer, and she came through with this very shocked looking face, and she just said, "A terrible thing happened to me."
I wanted to be alone. Immediately I got home, I ran a bath. I was definitely overwhelmed. I wanted to go back to my shell. My immediate reaction was to move on, but the lady I lived with was like, absolutely not. This happens a lot in this community, and it needs to be reported.
After being physically attacked, threatened with a gun, and fearing being abducted, Noxolo was a woman of steel, as she held on to the only thing that would secure the future that she wanted for herself. She lived to tell the tale, but the trauma of her experience would take long to leave her.
I needed ways to navigate the trauma, because I was already thinking about how I'm going to go back to work.
Noxolo Ntuli, a medical science master's student, has just survived a violent and frightening ordeal. After holding onto the bag that had her life's work, the criminals give up and leave with just her lunch bag, and Noxolo is left shaken.
Nox is very reserved about expressing her emotions generally, and even in this situation, it was more my shock and concern and cross-questioning.
Someone had called a security company. They came in, they wanted to take a statement. So the incident happened around 5 p.m. and by 7 p.m. they had gotten the footage.
And of course, when the video went public, Noxolo's entire life blew out of control.
I felt sad because this incident was really bringing a lot of attention to me or even my space. So it was a mix of sadness and anxiety.
She felt extremely exposed. It went as far as newspapers in Australia. You know, the BBC reported on it in London. We had journalists knocking at the gate.
So I think having something trend on social media is good and bad. People just keep wanting to talk about it, but they forget that it's traumatic for you.
People on Facebook are nasty, and they started saying things like, "Why were you hanging onto your bag? What a stupid thing to do." Nox got freaked out by the comments and she cut herself off Facebook. I mentioned trauma counseling to her and we went.
Oh, it's very good for a person to seek counseling after they've gone through a traumatic experience. With counseling, it assists one to find balance in their life. It brings that normalcy just to prepare that person in terms of moving forward.
So immediately after the incident, in the coming days, I think she went through various stages, maybe almost like the stages of grief. She got angry.
I think within a day or two, I arranged to see a therapist because I was already thinking about how I'm going to go back to work and have to take the same route that the incident had occurred in. So therapy helped me navigate the trauma and my feelings as well.
In terms of the aftermath, Nox is an incredibly resolved young woman. She bought herself a car.
The guys were caught the same day actually. So there was a case. I thought I was gonna have to go to the police station, but they actually came to me to take the statement. It took a while for trial to start. Court took maybe 6 months or so.
Watching that video, I think Noxolo handled the situation in a brave manner. I think going through the experience of being victimized and then opening charges against those people, and then now there's a case involved, and then now there's court appearances that needs to be done. Definitely one goes through secondary victimization. You know, there are different ways that a person can deal with them, which one of them I would encourage is continuous counseling. Can assist one to be able to deal with having to go through that whole court process system.
The process of going to court, some days it was really overwhelming. I was definitely scared because there's like one waiting room. So sometimes you'd be waiting in the same area as someone is out on bail. That would get a bit overwhelming.
And I was actually there one day when the Malawian guy's family walked up to us and they appealed to me, you know, saying, please, you know, please. And they used this kind of attitude. But Nox, like, no, this cannot and should not be happening to people.
The case was concluded. The police called me and told me the 2 guys got 10 years. I'm not sure what happened to the 3rd guy. I have mixed feelings about what happened to me. But I'm definitely proud of myself for fighting, for being resilient.
I felt proud of Nox. It's my Nox. A fantastic moment was her graduation, and there was no way that I was going to miss that. That was such an important day, and it was just spectacular and shining like she should.
Yeah, if you've been a victim of something, just have faith that maybe one day you'll find justice. We should all just keep fighting for what we believe in. Maybe you'll just have victory.
And wabona wena, Oswaka, you got that victory and then some. Now ladies, this is the part one hates to have to do. Giving tips to women on how to keep themselves safe is not something we should have to do. But the world is the way it is, and we at Vimba want to make sure we do our responsibility in giving some advice on how to stay safe out there. Sistembelihle, awusize lapho.
In Sonke's work, we encourage collaboration of stakeholders, collaboration of community-based organizations. SAPS is part of our forums, DSG is part of our forums. Curbing gender-based violence is a collaborative effort. In the social setting, it needs everybody in society. We all can play a part in it. It starts at home. It starts with the teachings of our children. But we really encourage people to have green doors. There are things that as a community we can do to make each other alert of the situation. So if you know, Madlamini, we are shy every day. As a community, let's create mechanisms of how we can protect her and say, if Madlamini Shayimpembe, let her say a safe word like tapawe, for instance, and then as a neighbor, I'll know, okay, Madlamini needs help, we go and we intervene. There are places that you can report crime. We have 2 Tuzela care centers in our hospitals. We've got one in Bara, we've got one in Tembisa. Trauma has a long-lasting effect. Post-traumatic stress disorder can lead them to depression or a form of bipolar, where you then need psychological and psychiatric treatment for that. So it's very important that women access those services. As a survivor myself, it's very important that we get sensitized as people, and that it doesn't choose you, and women are never at fault for their own trauma. Noxolo is not at fault. There's nothing in that situation that she could have done differently to make herself less a victim of crime. So I in my heart, I really would love that people would know that women are not at fault for the things that happen to them.
But that said, it needs to be said that Madota, this is also on us to play a role in making sure our streets are not a space for women to be abused. Making someone a target because you see them as weaker is a punk move and you know it. Speaking of punks, here's one who thought he could mess with the fairer sex. Or is it the smarter sex? That was a slick move, man. Let that be a reminder. What Titim Poroto san?